Jerusalem, the last point of conflict between three religions. What's at stake? Did you know that there is a city considered sacred to three of the world's greatest religions? Jerusalem is a place full of secrets, history, and faith, being the heart of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In this video, you will discover why Jerusalem is so special and which are the most sacred sites for each religion. But stay tuned until the end because the last topic is a true mystery revealed, something that few know. Subscribe now and activate the bell so you don't miss this fascinating journey. Are you ready to unravel the secrets of the thrice holy city? Then come with us. Jerusalem in Judaism, the spiritual center of Israel and the conflicts surrounding it. Jerusalem is not just a city for Jews. It is a symbol, a promise, a dream that has existed for millennia. Since biblical times, the city has been considered the spiritual heart of the Jewish people, the place chosen by God to house his temple and the dwelling place of the divine presence. However, this deep connection has always been accompanied by conflicts, destruction, and political disputes that continue to this day. Solomon's temple and the loss of the Ark of the Covenant. According to Jewish tradition, it was in Jerusalem. The King Solomon built the first temple around 960 BC, a sacred place that housed the Ark of the Covenant, the most mysterious artifact in Jewish history. It is said that inside the Ark were the tablets of the Ten Commandments, given to Moses on Mount Sinai. But what happened to the Ark? When the temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC, the Ark disappeared. Some believe it was hidden in underground tunnels beneath Jerusalem, while others argue that it was taken to Ethiopia or destroyed. To this day, its whereabouts remain one of the greatest mysteries in history. The Second Temple and the Roman conquest. After the Babylonian exile, the Jews returned and rebuilt the temple. This Second Temple was expanded by Herod, becoming one of the most impressive structures of antiquity. However, Roman rule over Judea led to revolts, culminating in the Great Jewish Revolt, 66 to 73 AD, which led to the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. The destruction of the Second Temple was one of the most tragic moments in Jewish history. The Roman general Titus sacked Jerusalem, took thousands of Jews as slaves to Rome, and completely destroyed the temple, leaving only part of a retaining wall, today known as the Western Wall. What few people know is that the looting of the temple financed the construction of the Colosseum in Rome. The famous Arch of Titus in Rome still shows a relief of the Romans carrying the golden candelabrum from the temple. The Western Wall, and the dispute over the Temple Mount today. The Western Wall is the holiest site for Jews, a place of pilgrimage and prayer. However, it is only a small part of what remains of the ancient temple. The exact location of the Holy of Holies, the most sacred area within the temple, is a matter of debate. The greatest religious and political controversy is on the Temple Mount, where Jews believe the two destroyed temples were located. However, today this site is home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, two of the holiest sites in Islam. Jews are forbidden from praying on the Temple Mount by decision of the Israeli authorities to avoid conflict with Muslims. This has generated some of the greatest religious and political friction in Jerusalem. Some Jewish groups claim the right to pray on the Temple Mount, while others argue that no Jew should set foot there, as it is considered an extremely holy site. This dispute has led to several violent clashes between Jews and Muslims throughout modern history. The hope for a third temple and modern conspiracies. Many Orthodox Jews believe that a third temple will be rebuilt in the future, ushering in an era of peace and redemption. The problem is that for this to happen, the Temple Mount would need to be emptied, which would mean the removal of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, an unthinkable scenario for the Muslim world. This idea has spawned several conspiracy theories, some claiming that extremist Jewish groups were secretly planning to destroy the mosque in order to rebuild the temple. In 1969, an Australian Christian attempted to burn down Al-Aqsa, claiming he wanted to prepare the ground for the third temple. The incident sparked riots across the Islamic world. Another modern controversy involves the Temple Institute, a Jewish group that has already recreated many of the artifacts that would be used in a new temple. including priestly vestments and ritual utensils. They even train priests for future temple rituals. For some, this is a sign of the impending reconstruction. For others, it is a risk of more conflict in Jerusalem. Modern Jerusalem and the dispute over sovereignty. Despite being the heart of Judaism for millennia, Jerusalem is still not unanimously considered the capital of Israel. Although the Israeli government has declared Jerusalem its capital, many countries and international organizations do not recognize this decision, arguing that the city should be shared with the Palestinians. In 2017, the United States recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moved its embassy there, sparking violent protests. Palestinians see East Jerusalem as the future capital of a Palestinian state, while Israel considers the city to be its indivisible and eternal capital. This dispute makes Jerusalem one of the most sensitive points on the global geopolitical scene. Any decision made about it, and the city can trigger international tensions and even armed conflicts. Jerusalem, between the sacred and the conflict for Jews, Jerusalem is more than a place. It represents a divine promise, an identity, and a hope that spans millennia. However, this intense connection has also made it the scene of some of the greatest religious and political disputes in the world. From the destruction of the temples to the controversies over the Temple Mount and sovereignty over the city, Jerusalem continues to be one of the most explosive points in global geopolitics. For many Jews, the dream of a full return to Jerusalem and the rebuilding of the temple remains alive. But for others, the city is a constant reminder of the challenges of coexistence between different peoples and religions. Will it ever be possible to find peace in a city that carries so much historical and religious weight? This is the big question that hangs over Jerusalem to this day. Jerusalem in Christianity, the path of Jesus and the controversies that have spanned the centuries. Jerusalem is the epicenter of the Christian faith, the city where Jesus lived his last days, was crucified, and according to tradition was resurrected. For millions of believers around the world, walking through the streets of the Old City is a unique spiritual experience, a reconnection with sacred history and the accounts of the Gospels. However, the city is also the scene of intense religious, archaeological, and political disputes, making its role in Christianity shrouded in controversy and mystery. The triumphal entry and the conflicting presence of Jesus in the temple, the Gospels, report that Jesus entered Jerusalem riding a donkey, while the crowd spread palm branches and cried out, "Hosanna to the Son of David." This episode, celebrated on Palm Sunday, was a sign that many saw Jesus as the long-awaited Messiah. However, his passage through the Temple of Jerusalem was one of the most tense moments in his trajectory. According to the Gospels, upon seeing the trade and corruption in the temple, Jesus expelled the money changers and denounced the desecration of God's house. This action caused great outrage among the religious leaders of the time, and may have been one of the factors that led to his condemnation. One of the greatest theological controversies is the role that Jesus played in the destruction of the temple. Years later, some see his words about the destruction of the temple as a prophecy fulfilled in the Roman invasion of 70 AD, while others argue that his message was misinterpreted. In any case, his impact on Jerusalem has never been forgotten. The Last Supper and the mystery of the upper room. The Last Supper, where Jesus shared bread and wine with his disciples, took place in Jerusalem, but there is great controversy over the exact location. The so-called upper room on Mount Zion is pointed out as the possible location of this event, but the authenticity of this place has been debated for centuries. Interestingly, the cenacle sits above a space revered as the tomb of King David, making the area contested between Jews and Christians. To complicate matters further, during Ottoman rule, the room was converted into a mosque. Today, access to the site is limited and marked by tensions between different religious groups. The trial of Jesus and the Via Dolorosa controversy. After his arrest, Jesus was tried by the Jewish Sanhedrin and later by Pontius Pilate. The exact location of Jesus' trial is a matter of debate. Some say it took place at the Antonia fortress near the Temple Mount, while others believe it took place at Herod's palace, in another part of the city. The Via Dolorosa, the route Jesus took to his crucifixion, is today one of the main Christian pilgrimage routes. However, there is debate over the authenticity of this route. The current route was established centuries after Jesus' death, and some historians question whether it truly reflects the path he took. This doubt, however, does not prevent thousands of faithful from following this path every year, carrying crosses and remembering the suffering of Christ. The crucifixion and the mystery of Golgotha. The site of Jesus' crucifixion, known as Golgotha, or place of the skull, is also a controversial subject. Christian tradition identifies this place within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where the faithful believe that Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected. However, in the 19th century, a British explorer suggested that the true location would be in the so-called Garden Tomb, outside the walls of the ancient city. This location is defended by some Protestants who question the authenticity of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The controversy intensifies with archaeological excavations. Some evidence indicates that the area of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was already a place of Christian veneration since the first centuries, while others claim that there is no concrete proof that Jesus was buried there. The Holy Sepulchre and disputes between Christians. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, considered the most sacred site in Christianity, is not only a place of prayer and pilgrimage, it is also a religious battlefield. Different Christian denominations have been fighting for control of the temple for centuries, leading to fights, aggression, and divisions within the faith itself. Currently, the church is shared between 6 Christian groups: Catholics, Greek Orthodox, Armenians, Copts, Syrians, and Ethiopians. However, this coexistence is marked by conflicts. There are reports of monks getting into physical fights inside the church over territorial disputes or prayer times. A curious situation is that, to avoid confrontations, the key to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has been in the custody of a Muslim family for centuries, who act as mediators between the Christian denominations. The resurrection and the lost archaeological evidence. The resurrection of Jesus is the central event of Christianity. However, throughout history, many have tried to find physical evidence of this miracle. Archaeological excavations. Excavations in the area of the Holy Sepulchre have revealed Jewish tombs from the 1st century, but no conclusive evidence of Christ's tomb. In 2016, when a team of restorers opened the stone covering the supposed tomb, they found a second marble slab beneath it, the origin of which remains a mystery. Another controversy involves the Shroud of Turin, which many believe to be the cloth that covered the body of Jesus. Although scientific tests have cast doubt on its dating, millions of believers still consider it one of the proofs of the resurrection. Jerusalem and Christianity today. Between faith and politics today, Jerusalem remains a sacred destination for Christians, but it is also a center of political and religious tensions. Christians represent a minority in the city, and many live under constant pressure due to the conflict between Jews and Muslims. The city is also the scene of debates about the prophecy of the second coming of Christ. Some evangelical groups believe that political events in Jerusalem, such as the rebuilding of the Jewish temple or the intensification of conflicts, are signs of the apocalypse and the return of Jesus. In addition, there is a debate about the control of holy sites. Some Christians argue that the old city of Jerusalem should be internationalized, while Israel maintains full sovereignty. This geopolitical conflict makes Jerusalem one of the most sensitive points in the modern world. Faith, mysteries, and conflicts. In Jerusalem for Christians, Jerusalem is not only a historical site but the setting for the events that underpin their faith. However, behind the devotion and pilgrimage, there are archaeological disputes, religious conflicts, and political debates that make the city a theological and geopolitical battlefield. After all, will Jerusalem ever be able to live in peace, or will it continue to be a reflection of the disputes between faith, power, and history? Jerusalem in Islam, the night of Muhammad's ascension and the disputes that mark the city. Jerusalem is one of the holiest places in Islam, after Mecca and Medina. For millions of Muslims around the world, the city is not only a historical site, but also a religious and political symbol. The basis for this reverence comes from the night journey and ascension of Muhammad, Isra and Miraj. one of the most mysterious episodes in Islam. According to Islamic tradition, Muhammad was miraculously transported from Mecca to Jerusalem in a single night, and from there ascended to heaven, meeting prophets such as Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. The heart of this event is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, located on the Temple Mount, one of the most disputed sites on the planet. This area is also home to the Dome of the Rock, an Islamic shrine that marks the exact spot from which Muhammad is said to have ascended to heaven. But Jerusalem for Muslims is not just a holy place. It is also a political battleground, a symbol of resistance and an epicenter of conflicts between Muslims, Jews, and Christians. Isra and Miraj, the night journey and ascension to heaven. The Quran mentions the night of ascension in the verse, "Glorified is he who transported his servant by night from the sacred mosque to the far mosque, whose precincts we have blessed, to show him some of our signs." Quran 17:1. According to tradition, the angel Gabriel, appeared to Muhammad and took him from the Kaaba in Mecca to the far mosque, Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, which many Islamic scholars interpret as the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. There, Muhammad is said to have led a prayer with the prophets who came before him, including Moses, Abraham, and Jesus. After that, he ascended to heaven via the Holy Rock, which is now inside the Dome of the Rock. In heaven, he met God and received the order that Muslims should pray 5 times a day. This story reinforces the sanctity of Jerusalem in Islam and makes the city considered one of the main pilgrimage sites for the faithful. But there is a problem. The name Jerusalem itself does not appear in the Quran. This has generated numerous controversies over the centuries. The first direction of Islamic prayer and the shift to Mecca. Few people realize that in the early days of Islam, Muslims prayed facing Jerusalem, not Mecca. This direction was known as the Qibla. However, around 624 AD, Muhammad received a new revelation, determining that the direction of prayer should be towards the Kaaba in Mecca. This episode marked a significant change and has led some critics to question whether Jerusalem should still be as relevant in Islam as Mecca and Medina. This raises a question. Is Jerusalem sacred in Islam because of a divine order or for political reasons? Some historians argue that Islamic reverence for Jerusalem was reinforced centuries later, when Muslims sought to consolidate their influence in the city, especially during the Crusades. The Islamic conquest of Jerusalem and the construction of Al-Aqsa Jerusalem was conquered by Muslims in 638 CE, under the Caliph Omar ibn al-Khattab. Unlike other invasions of the city, Omar entered peacefully and guaranteed religious freedom for Christians and Jews, a contrast to the bloody conflicts that would follow. It was during Islamic rule that the Dome of the Rock was built in the 7th century. The building is one of the most impressive in Islamic architecture and has a profound significance. It houses the rock from which Muhammad is said to have ascended to heaven. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, also located on the Temple Mount, has become one of the holiest sites in Islam. However, this site is also claimed by the Jews, as it is the same site where Solomon's temple stood, which still generates conflicts between Israelis and Palestinians today. The Crusades and the bloodshed in the name of faith. During the Crusades, Jerusalem became a battlefield. In 1099, European Christians took the city from the Muslims and committed a brutal massacre against the Islamic and Jewish population. Historical accounts indicate that blood ran through the streets of the city. But the Muslims reconquered Jerusalem in 1187 under the command of Saladin. Unlike the Crusaders, Saladin allowed Christians and Jews to continue living in the city, consolidating Jerusalem as a center of coexistence, at least temporarily. The Islamic reconquest of Jerusalem made Al-Aqsa once again one of the greatest symbols of Islamic power. The Israeli occupation and current conflicts today, Jerusalem is one of the most contested cities in the world, especially because of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Temple Mount. Since the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, Muslims have viewed the occupation of the city as an affront. During the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel took East Jerusalem, including Al-Aqsa, sparking riots throughout the Islamic world. One of the biggest controversies today is that although religious control of the mosque is maintained, Israel maintains sovereignty over the area. Religious Jews believe that the Temple Mount is the sacred site of their ancient temples and claim the right to pray there, something that is seen as provocation by Muslims. In recent years, violent protests and frequent clashes have occurred between Palestinians and Israeli soldiers in the area of the mosque. Many see this dispute as a powder keg that could explode at any moment. Jerusalem as a symbol of faith and resistance. For Muslims, Jerusalem represents much more than a holy site. The city is a symbol of the Islamic struggle against foreign occupation and a central point in Palestinian identity. The night of Muhammad's ascension reinforces the spiritual importance of Jerusalem in Islam, but the disputes over the Temple Mount, the city's sovereignty, and the ongoing violence show that religion and politics are deeply intertwined in this issue. While some see Jerusalem as a place of worship, others see it as a battlefield. And the question remains, will there ever be a day when this city can truly be a space of peace between Muslims, Jews, and Christians? Jerusalem is more than a city. It is a symbol of faith, history, and conflict. For Jews, it is the site of the Holy Temple and the spiritual heart of Israel. For Christians, it is where Jesus lived his last days, was crucified, and rose again. For Muslims, it is the site of the night of Muhammad's ascension and is home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But this holy city has also been the scene of disputes that span the centuries. Wars have been fought, empires have fallen, and peoples have been persecuted in the name of faith and dominion over their sacred lands. Today, Jerusalem remains at the center of religious and political tensions, being one of the most guarded and disputed territories in the world. The big question is, will Jerusalem ever truly be a city of peace? Or will it continue to be a battlefield where religion and politics mix in an endless conflict? If you liked this content and want to understand even more about the history and controversies of Jerusalem, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell for more content like this. And now, click on the video shown on the final screen to discover an amazing secret about Jerusalem that few people know about. You won't want to miss it.